It's just 11:01, so we'll give folks a few more seconds here to join before we get started, but thanks for joining. Back on in a second. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Once again, thank you for joining the BrandMuscle and Simpli.fi State of Local Marketing in Telecom and Technology webinar. We're excited to have you. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Danielle Kinney. Danielle, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, hi, how are you? Danielle Kinney, I'm with Simpli.fi. I'm the sales manager in the Northeast region, been partnered with BrandMuscle for a really long time, and we're excited to tell you guys a little bit more about the industry and how you can kind of harness what's going on today.
Great, thanks for joining, Danielle. Great to have you. My name is Jason Tabeling. I'm our EVP of Product Marketing at BrandMuscle. Been around here for 4 years and working through all of our state of local marketing work with our marketing team, and really excited to share with you today what we have. So in our webinar today, over the next hour or so, we're going to walk you through kind of key local marketing trends for 2020, some findings in our state of local marketing research, and then specifically diving into telecom and technology industry trends, talk about some challenges that are facing telecom marketers, and then give you some ideas of where you could focus your time to have some of the greatest impact. So to start it off, Danielle, I want to give it to you to talk about some emerging industry trends.
Okay, thanks, Jason. A little bit about Simpli.fi, to give you a quick little overview. We've been around for a little over 10 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. I've been here for 6 of those years, and I've seen the company grow from search retargeting to move into the mobile space, and then now into OTT CTV. And as the shift in the industry has come about, that means marketers need to really be changing too, because there's different ways to reach your ideal customer. A little quick overview about us, because we're going to talk a lot about OTT and CTV today, but we have over 26,000 live OTT CTV campaigns from 2018, and over 7,000 advertisers in that. And we're also going to talk about how we're able to target users at the household level. That gives us access to over 250 million US households, which you can target and do some pretty cool things. Alrighty, next. Okay, so again, we're going to talk about industry trends. There's 4 specific trends that I really want to talk about today that we're seeing across the market, not just in digital, but also traditional media is at a crossroads. There's a lot of changes going on, which means, again, curating messaging and attribution and all the things that come with that. So these trends should really be top of mind for marketers. Again, not just specifically for telecom, but general market conditions to be aware of. Alrighty, the first of that being device proliferation. Okay, everyone knows that this is going on. The average person over the age of 14, so 14 years old, has at least 3 connected devices, right? So in the past, if you wanted to reach your ideal customer, you knew which medium you had to reach them on, right? You could reach them on linear TV if it over-indexed for a certain audience, but now it's just not that simple. So like in the past, newspapers, TV, all that stuff, but now because you can reach them on a desktop, tablet, a connected device, mobile device, for the marketer, it presents a challenge that you have to now curate a message that best speaks to them when they're consuming content on that specific device. And then from there, the attribution mechanisms that come with that. So that's something to be aware of and something that we can't deny is happening today.
Yeah, Danielle, we recently heard a stat from your alma mater, Indiana University, that says those incoming freshmen have, on average, 8 devices that they're registering to the network. So it's definitely a huge trend and something we need to pay attention to.
Go Hoosiers. Yeah. The second trend is consumer privacy. Again, this should not be a shock to anybody. You have GDPR, which was in Europe, and now it's all coming here with CCPA, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act. And there's new national regulations in Canada, and US is going to follow suit, right? So we're not sure yet if it's going to be state by state or national regulation, I can talk for hours about this because it's a hot topic, right? Because if you go state by state, you have to be compliant with it's just not scalable. So I'm assuming there's going to be some type of national regulation coming, but never before has there been such an awareness and concern from consumers about the collection of their data usage and the monetary ties to it. They know that publishers and content providers are making money off of it. That's why advertising exists to begin with. So now consumers are a lot more aware of that, and it's kind of the debate on, if we don't use PII, personal identifiable information, how much data are consumers willing to give to advertisers, knowing that would keep content free. And for them, it creates a more curated ad experience where ads are more targeted to them. So the challenge for marketers is, how do I use the tools that are available and compliant to harness the data that I have while not invading privacy? So curating a message in a non-invasive way. And then the third trend is attribution revolution. So 25 years ago, let's start from the beginning, you had your first banner ad and someone clicked on it, right? In this industry, we have lived and died by the click. And we're going to talk about some stats later from your guys' report, but there's a misconception that display doesn't work because you're driving to a click. That is the old way of thinking. The only thing that should be optimizing to a click today is PPC, right? So if you're running display or digital, you should be looking at real attribution metrics that are going to bring new business to you. So some type of on-site action. It could be finding the nearest retailer, or purchasing, or filling out a lead, whatever makes the most sense for your business, or driving people into a location. So again, these tangible metrics that will drive results and drive customers for you is super important. I always say a click isn't going to pay your company's bills, right? It's the online action. It's getting new customers into your store. And that, again, is coming to all different mediums. So TV. Now, linear TV, a lot is moving to CTV and OTT. And with that, and even audio, comes the attribution methodologies that were born in digital. So now that's kind of happening throughout the space. The last trend that I want to talk about is linear TV migration. So again, shouldn't be a surprise to anyone on the call, but it's a mass migration in the past 5 years from linear to the digital OTT space, and it's only accelerating. So over 70% of US households, I have some more stats I'm going to share, are streaming. So they're either cord cutting or cord shaving. Cord cut would be you don't have any traditional cable provider. Cord shaving would be you might have a CTV, OTT device to access web streaming content, as well as the traditional cable part. But if you look at millennial occupied households, which we all want to reach, because today a millennial is anyone between 25 and 40 years old. That's someone we all want to be in front of. I think we can agree. That's an ideal client for almost any business. 90% have cut or shaved. So we need to be able to be curating that message for those devices, and again, driving the attribution that comes with that as the new frontier of digital is about.
Yeah, I cut my cord. It could not have been a better decision.
Cut my cord. It just sounds so crazy, but that's what it is. Same. And like, you have to figure out which one works. I do YouTube TV, which is great. It's like basically live TV. You can still watch it and record, but it's kind of a trial and error. And everyone's just kind of figuring out what players are going to lead the way. So it's happening today. We're all figuring it out. Alrighty. On to the current OTT CTV landscape. Again, I said that there's a few stats I wanted to share. And if you want to maybe screen grab this, or we can distribute the deck afterwards. But the stats that I find to be most appealing and just kind of something to think of is that so 820 million OTT CTV devices in the US, that's huge, right? And by 2022, 55.1 million people will no longer watch traditional TV. That's wild. But I also think it's really interesting, if you see the one at the bottom, while viewing a program, 2 out of 3 use a second screen to look up information on a product they saw in an ad. So I know myself, when I'm watching TV, I'm probably on Instagram, but I'm looking up products. I'm consuming content in not just one way. But that again, you should see an increase if you're running OTT, if you're running linear, you're going to see an increase in branded search. You're going to see an increase in organic search. And just know that all of your different mediums, they talk to each other. There's no such thing as, a single medium campaign. All of your different campaigns across, if you're running linear, digital, they all help each other. You should see lift from all of them together. So you should definitely be on these devices as well as online, which can help you close the gap for many audiences. And with that has really come, and this is again kind of something that Simpli.fi has really invested in, but as an industry, the location data evolution, right? It started with DMA, and then you get down to the zip. Now you're able to target neighborhoods. So with us and where the industry is going is how addressable can you really be, right? How can you target someone that granularly? And that's where the addressable advertising cross-device comes in. Jason, you can go to the next.
Yep.
And then you can go to the next one there too. So in the past, you could target based on IP, right? So based on IP. And if anyone remembers, like the LiveRamps of the world that are doing address lookup based on an email or a physical address, the match rate is like 40% because IP is just not reliable. And now it's becoming PII. So with, again, Consumer Privacy Acts coming, it's becoming PII. So a lot of times in the ad call, again, this might get a little technical, the IP address comes truncated. So it's not as targeted as it was before. So marketers, again, need to figure out how can I, create less waste and less spill and target more granularly. You go to the next one. So a lot of companies such as us, and we've done something I think unique in this space, we have a geofencing technology. So what we're able to do is actually upload 126 million US addresses and correlate that to a property line ID. So again, there's a lot of privacy implications that go into that we had to build out. It took our developers 2 years, but that allows us to target at the household level based on the property line, plot line, which basically says your house versus my house, for both commercial and residential. So that's where the industry is going. How can I target a household while not being, infringing on PII? And then how can I leverage, right, just based on the industry and everything we've kind of touched on. It's really important to focus on data-driven tactics, right? We have so much data because traditional is moving into the digital space. That means we have digital metrics, data tied to it that now allow me to target even more granularly, report even more granularly, and have attribution mechanisms that have been reserved in the past for just digital-born tactics.
Yeah, I mean, for us here, we're really continuously working with our customers to get further and further towards an actual conversion event. Getting sales data is very difficult lots of times to understand purchases, but contact us forms, getting directions, lead forms, all these things can still indicate intent and fall into the attribution models or whatever you want to do here as you leverage on these targeting capabilities Danielle's talking about, in addition to whatever those right conversion events are for you within your space.
Totally. And a lot of you guys I know have brick and mortar locations, so we'll talk to how you can leverage that. So a few ideas that I think are pretty unique and that tie in data and results in attribution. The first would be being able to target users based on intent, right? Like Jason mentioned, online intent is a huge signal that the person could be in market for a product you sell. So how do I create a custom audience while eliminating waste? In the past, you'd buy segments. This person's a mom with 3 kids, so that's someone I want to market a family plan to for, phones. But we just have so much more data. Nothing about that means they're in market today for a product. So with intent online, people are searching on your competitors. People are searching on general phone plans or, branded terms even. So I can build audiences based on those data variables and only target people in my market that are actively in market for a product or service I'm advertising. So cutting through the waste that would come in a segment. And then the attribution, I made sure to put the attribution metrics here, would be some type of on-site action. Maybe it's, if you're not doing any online sales, it could be find your nearest retailer, right? And that's something you can optimize to, provide data to. Maybe it's submit a form to get more information, or an auto sign up for a test drive, right? There's so many of these online actions that can signal intent. And then all this can be scaled across mobile, desktop, OTT, CTV. Again, creating one audience cross medium. That's the way that the industry is going. Next one. Geofencing, right? So again, for clients that have brick or mortar locations, I want to target users who are in a competitive location to let them know that my offering is better, or they can get this rebate, or whatever that market is. You can also do brand loyalty. You can create fences around your place of business for some type of discount, or if you're selling cell phones, maybe a reduced rate to buy a cell phone cover or something, a case, something like that. Proximity targeting, depending on what your product is, all of this is using geofencing technology, which is essentially building lat-long fences around a point in the world, and then collecting users, and then hopefully showing them ads and tracking them back into your location. So for this, again, digital, but you're not optimizing to a click. You're optimizing to driving people into your location and better understanding your client's offline foot traffic, which didn't exist in the past. You just have to be like, all right, I ran TV and I saw an increase in traffic by 10%. Now we can actually track these mechanisms back to a campaign. And the conversion zone would be your locations, where you build a fence and collect users and track if they saw an ad and then came to your location.
And I think in this space, Danielle, we see a lot of events targeting for tech and telco. Yeah. See a lot of competitive conquesting. Those two things I think really resonate here, and are capabilities that weren't possible to do before, right? Setting up an audience for those who are at a competitor's store or location, or folks that had been to an event with you just around that event, setting up fences there, and then targeting those audiences later is a key use case here, I think, that Danielle's talking about.
Totally. And even something as simple as, so it's really the technology. You can geofence any place in the world that makes sense for you. So we have some clients that, there's a sports team in their area that they want to align with, but they don't have the tens of millions of dollars to have a billboard in a sports stadium. So you can essentially geofence that arena, and you're creating a digital sponsorship, and it's on a CPM, cost per thousand, by serving an ad, and allows you kind of be part of that conversation and have brand equity attached to that brand without having to shell out the millions that would come from an actual stadium sponsorship.
Yeah, good.
And just kind of, again, explaining a little bit more about geofencing, collecting users in a point in the world, measure the amount of users that came to your location on a cost per visit and total visit rate. What else is really cool, you could see where your best customers came from. So you can see that, the Verizon down the road, the cost per visit was a lot more efficient than targeting the Sprint store, right? So you're able to, again, better understand where your best customers are coming from, and make a strategy that is harnessing that data. And then from there, you can run Lift. So Lift is really cool. Again, it's super data heavy. We can kind of top line talk about it. It basically will show you, we have the ability it's just a technology that we run. It's not an additional cost, but you're able to look at your incremental visits. So you can look at a baseline of users that are coming from your competitor location, or wherever you have those fences, into your location, those that didn't see an ad versus those that did. So you can measure incremental lift in visits, which helps you kind of answer that question, how do I not know this user was organically going to come into my location? So we have you covered on that. And then last but not least, the audience targeting. I mentioned the 126 million households in the US. You can now do some pretty cool things with that. So you can actually curate audiences based on your ideal customers. You can use your first party data to target someone that maybe signed up for a phone plan, and there's an upsell opportunity, or even as an opt-out. And then from targeting that specific household, imagine this house, not that house, and I can kind of show you exactly how granular that looks in a few slides coming up. But then from there, you can target users at those households across mobile, desktop, OTT, CTV, with foot traffic and attribution into your location. So think digital direct mail across all screens. Even like you could do a big screen living room only experience on a CTV OTT device with attribution. Again, so you're taking TV and putting digital attribution metrics to it. So it's pretty cool and unique, and something that a lot of customers are using. So that's if you have your first party audience, and then we can also curate audience lists based on, we have credit bureau data that we've now overlaid onto those 126 million households. So if you want to target a certain user who just moved, or family size targeting, or other interests, demographics, even someone that is a Verizon customer. You can target those users at the household level, only those users, eliminating waste that you'd get if you were targeting like a zip or just a point of town to be there. And then track foot traffic and attribution into your location. So it's just such an exciting time because we have so much data available to us, and compliantly we can do a lot with it. And then in terms of attribution, you're optimizing to cost per visit, total visit rate, lift video completion rate if you're running CTV, OTT, something else you can see. And then that can be distributed across mobile, desktop, CTV, and OTT. And then the next few slides, Jason, we can just hop to, but just kind of showing you what it looks like in our system. You again can see where the users that within your first party are kind of in a Zillow-like look, or users that are within your demographic. Go to the next slide. And that's how we curate it for you. Jason's team can kind of go in and put all that information in. Go to the next one. Kind of showing household filters and how you can target users instead of just targeting the entire DMA because it over-indexes for your ideal audience. I only want to target households that have this amount of children, this disposable income, house value of X, a customer of Y company. You can go to the next. Again, kind of more filters you can add on. And then this is the great one. So this is literally looking at households. This is what I mean. Addressable is a buzzword right now. When I say addressable, I mean I'm targeting this household in blue and not the rest. So I'm not buying a zip code again for over-indexing against an ideal demographic. I'm literally targeting this specific household versus that household because of the demographic, sociographic behavior tied to it, either with my first party data or from curating an audience. So it's pretty cool because then from there, you have your cross-device graph at that household level, mobile, desktop, OTT, you can target that household across all of them, unified messaging. So we talked about device proliferation. You can have reach there and kind of own that household. And then again, with the foot traffic and attribution into your location. So this is what I mean when I say digital. Sometimes people think like, oh, it's a click. You should not be buying just a click, right? There's a lot more tangible metrics that you guys should be taking advantage of.
Yeah, I think, Danielle, for this one, Danielle, I think everything you're saying resonates here, especially what we see in the telco space as well. The idea of just talking at your channel partners about this as something that resonates with them, right? As you hear Danielle talk, at least I do, there's a lot, she's very familiar in operating in a digital space and talking about attribution and OTT, CTV. When we talk to customers about this, and Danielle has done this as well, we're talking about, things that resonates with them. Digital direct mail, this is a replacement, right? So you do direct mail today, take it to the digital world. This is a great way to do it. You don't need to buy a list, right? This list is available. You can include or exclude based on all these pieces. And a lot of the information at corporate is difficult to get at such a hyper local level when we talk about these channel partners. So tools like this become really important and are great advantage givers to those folks at the local level and your channel partners in specifically this industry.
And also, like, this shouldn't intimidate you. There's a lot of data, but Jason's team curates all of this for you so they can help make recommendations based on understanding what your needs are. They'll tell you what you should be running, right, to kind of harness that. And something else I want to know, there's so many buzzwords, and I was like, audio is cool, and this is cool. Like, all these things are cool, and there's always going to be a next cool thing, but what are your goals, right? You shouldn't just be buying something because it sounds cool. You should be always buying things that tie back to an online conversion, an in-store visit, whatever your KPIs are. So don't just buy things because it's a buzzword and it makes sense. Always know what your goals are and then build from there.
Yeah, good. All right, Danielle, you're good. You want to talk anything about these visualization slides? Are we okay?
I think we're okay, yeah.
All right. I think you did more than okay.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you.
Thanks, Jason.
I think somewhere right now, Spurco and Frost are having a high five of what a great job you're doing. So
okay, good.
All right, so we'll switch now into the state of local marketing specific study that we did at BrandMuscle. Danielle just laid out a great overview of what's happening in industry and some really cool ways to take advantage of it. This survey here and this look will give you an idea of how those channel partners in the tech and telco industry are dealing with everything. So for us, we have been doing the state of local marketing report for 5 years. This year, we did two really important things. One is we started to verticalize our findings. So this is our third or fourth specific vertical webinar that we've done, so that you can understand what it means for your specific industry in comparison to the total state of local marketing. That's one. And two, we built this maturity matrix based on all these competencies and dimensions that really fully understands what success and good looks like for a local through channel marketing program. And so we'll talk through all of these things, but they go from, content to spend and everything in between. So when we look at the maturity matrix, what we found was a couple key things. Relatively across the board, a majority of channel partners are in the disengaged and developing area, with a majority in developing, and even more so in the telco space. So 67% of folks are in the developing range. This to me indicates two things. One, no matter what industry you're dealing with very immature channel partners, lots of opportunity. I think that'll resonate with everyone on the webinar today. There's a lot of opportunity still to grow and develop here. And that's even accentuated more with the percentage of people that are developing for the telco space with such a higher percent. So they're trying, right? They're not disengaged, right? They're interested in trying and working to get more mature in this space. So let's dive in a little bit to that. First is perceived impact of this program. We wanted to understand from folks, do you actually care? The programs that you're supporting at corporate through your channel partners, do they actually care about them? And the good news is 91% of folks said yes, they do care. So these are highly impactful and important programs, even more so than what we're seeing across all industries, which is just over 80%. So everywhere these are important, but it's even more so in telco. We also asked them what their biggest priorities were heading into 2019. So now we're into 2020. We're going to have an updated version of this report here in the next couple of months. But just even looking at 2019, what we saw was events, direct mail, print, and TV were still all higher than the benchmark. And that's even despite the fact that social media for everyone and telco was still the #1 priority. So social and social media is still a big priority, but still higher than we would have expected versus other verticals when we look at traditional events or traditional media tactics for telecom, which I think the stuff Danielle, it's why we really liked having Simpli.fi or Danielle talk earlier, seeing some of TV be as high as it is versus other benchmarks. Danielle's prescribing digital ways to evolve that TV, to evolve direct mail, to do some more stuff with events and capturing audiences that can, I think, help digitize these businesses across the board.
Totally, and it's not like they're going away, they're just evolving, right? So there's just
Right.
more data now and more ways to target these users. So why not do it in a more advanced data-driven way?
Yep, absolutely. So we also broke it down a little bit more specifically, like what are you using, what are included in the packages. And it's interesting that for telco, every one of these areas that we broke out for digital was slightly less included, not significantly in many cases, but slightly less included across paid search, SEO, just having a website, online business listings, or location data management, with the exception of online display ads. So this space is, a little bit more inclusive, if you will, of online display ads than other tactics. And you can see still a lot of opportunity for location data management, SEO, and paid search in this space.
Yeah, and again, the question would be, since this is, a little broad, what are those driving to? So even if you're running, you're like, oh, we have to run online display ads, great. Some people think like it should be part of it, but
Right.
All display ads aren't created equal, right? So you need to make sure that those ads are driving to some type of, again, business objective, as opposed to, all right, we're running it to run it.
Yep. And another good example, I think, in this space is like for paid search, we see a lot of brands wanting to own the paid search keywords. Things like, in this case, cell phone, right, would be owned by the brand, and they can determine if that makes it into the store or does an e-commerce transaction. I think that's why it's less included, but I think there's still lots of opportunity in this space to think about these things and what they mean for the local channel partner and how you can potentially draw in incremental funding. So for example, if you're vetting your paid search keywords or any of these tactics based on online ROI, a term like cell phone store near me might not perform as well. But a cell phone channel partner or your local partners here might be very interested in buying that term and actually convert, because that's someone who's looking for a local place. So I think you gotta make sure that as you're evaluating what's in and what's out, you're thinking about the impact that it has both at a corporate level as well as the local level. So we asked these folks what was effective and what was not, and what you use and what you don't use. And so what I think is interesting here to describe this chart is basically a 2x2. You've got perception of effectiveness in the y-axis, up and down, and how often they're used on the x-axis, left to right. So what's interesting here is a lot of the traditional tactics show up as perceived less effective. Really, that's where all of them show. Then online displays right at the line. And then everything digital and above is in perceived to be more effective. So as you move up, right, newspapers the least perceived effective, hosting events perceived the most effective. I think this is interesting when you compare it to the slide we just showed a couple slides ago, where these digital tactics aren't necessarily as included as much, despite the fact these channel partners see them as effective.
Yeah, I think I think like we said, all display ads aren't created equal, and who knows. And I also find it interesting that email is so high, because with email, you have to get the open rate, which are at the all-time lows, and then from there you get a click. So it's like, so minimal. And I just, email I think is again something that's changing. But I would agree with this chart if you're optimizing to a click. 100% agree. It's probably not effective, which again has a lower effectiveness, but all again display should be driving to an action specific page or form fill, or driving to a visit or something like that if you have a brick and mortar location. So optimizing to a click, this chart makes sense, but again, it's what are those initiatives you're driving to.
Yep, good. Okay, so since social media was still the #1 prioritized tactic in 2019 for telco, we also wanted to dive in and look at specific social media platforms. And it's really interesting to see for telco, Facebook is just dominant, right, in terms of social media use. You see we broke out advertise, engage, which is essentially post, and then both. So a majority of folks here are doing both, and they highly align with what they're doing on other industries. Slightly lower in some of the other areas, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, which I think, for all intents and purposes is fine. We see some other industries, because of the local nature or visual nature, maybe a retail category, manufacturing categories, be a little bit higher on some of the visual platforms, but there's still high engagement and usage of these things, dominant in Facebook, and that has continued to be the trend overall. And I think it is almost because as these local channel partners become more mature and they think about where they enter into the digital space, Facebook is something they're the most comfortable with. So all the stuff Danielle just talked through may actually be a more effective tactic, but they may not be as comfortable with it. So I think education, tearing down some of these barriers, making it easier, helping them understand some of the levers that they can pull in some of these different tactics is also very interesting in comparison to what you can get out of social, which is certainly valuable, scalable, et cetera, but there's a lot of different options, I think.
And also, just like looking, you're right, it just depends on the vertical. Like LinkedIn is probably a lot more effective for sort of B2B. So a client that has B2B needs, depending on your demographic, if it's younger, Snapchat might make more sense. So just kind of knowing how the mediums are used based on your audience. Facebook's great, and Facebook is, it's a huge driver for a lot of our clients. The one thing to just note with privacy, Facebook, there's a lot of things that are changing. So this is great, but also to put all your eggs in one basket, you should diversify, because who knows what's going to happen. I mean, hopefully nothing. I love Facebook. But.
Right. Okay. The other thing here is integration. When we talk to the channel partners through the survey, we want to understand how they connect the dots between all these different things they need to do, from their brand management, co-op management, media tactics, fulfillment vendors, all those different pieces. How difficult or easy is this to work across these different areas? And so integration scored relatively well. You can see 42% of folks at least said there was some integration or aggregation across tactics, which was better than the benchmark. The interesting piece is, look at that middle area that we carved out in blue. That's some. There's some with a few vendors, but can't manage them out of a single program. That's actually shrunk down and 12 points lower than the benchmark. So you're either seeing both sides of the spectrum in this space deviate from the benchmark. So they're either saying it's a lot more integrated program, so sure, you're doing a great job, or less so. And so there's an opportunity in that, right? Some of the folks that we surveyed are doing a good job, and there's certainly opportunity to do better, but are doing great. And others, there's just still a lot of opportunity. That amount of not sure or there is no integration is higher than you'd like it to see.
And also with you guys, I think that what we've, through our partnership, found great about BrandMuscle is that you guys can do the creative and then help with the distribution, and kind of cuts out the middleman of all of that and allows you to have everything in one place and know that your business is being watched and taken care of.
Well said, Danielle. Well said. Thank you. You know, the other piece here is we asked them about their knowledge, right? So earlier in the maturity matrix, we showed people still in developing as a high percentage. You know, very few folks, 6% of folks in telecom and 4% everywhere consider themselves a marketing expert, where a majority of folks don't understand it, hasn't been a priority, understand it some, but want to learn more. There's an eagerness here to want to learn more, but a majority are still, you know, very, very novice in this space. And we expect that really to continue as channel partners churn out and businesses continue to look at what the right folks to invest in and where they want to spend their resources. So this education piece, I think, is really important. And it's education in our mind as a way we're thinking about our products here. It's education to help them become more effective, but it's also simplifying the process, more do-it-for-me campaigns, a better integration, simplification of how you can actually go about executing this. And we'll talk a little bit about that, I think, more when we talk about where we see this going.
And that's why I think these calls that you guys are doing and your reports that you guys do every year they're so effective, because it's an ever-changing like atmosphere. Everything, like something I can say today can be completely not even what's going on tomorrow, and we're all learning. And even though I've been digital first and I don't know much about linear TV, I've never really been around it. So just kind of surrounding yourself with the experts of all of that and just making sure that you know, you're tapping those resources to stay top of mind as the industry's evolving.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's challenging for all of us, even those quote unquote experts in the space. There's a lot of evolution happening, so we're all learning together and trying to make it easier for each other.
Totally.
So these next two slides we always find to be really interesting. These are, we asked them about the perceived corporate commitment to these local channel programs. And I think it's interesting to see, you know, about 48% of folks say they are committed or fully committed, which is great, roughly aligns to the marketplace, and you even have a high response rate of it's, you know, a core part of the overall marketing program, but maybe not committed to it specifically, but they recognize the commitment. And I think this is scored well across the board, maybe by the nature of having a platform, right? These are all, a majority of these folks are BrandMuscle customers, so there's at least some platform available to do these things, but a good amount of perceived corporate commitment. And what's also interesting that we've seen here is this is looking at their own commitment. Hey, they're rating their own local partners' commitment, and they are perceiving themselves to be just as committed, if not more, than the benchmark. So they're in with you too. They feel committed to the program, they respond well, and I think that's exactly what you want to see. We have done a couple of these verticals or even specific client presentations on this where the two have been opposed to one another. They perceive to be no corporate commitment and very high local, or vice versa. Here they're roughly aligned with one another, which we think is very, very strong indication for the telco and telecom sector. On a little different mark here, we also asked how much money they were spending. how much of their own money that they're spending. So 63% are spending less than 1% of their revenue on marketing versus 44% of the benchmark. So the benchmark is spending more across our local channel partners. 30% are spending greater than 2% of their revenue on marketing dollars. So just funding these programs, and I think that speaks to their local commitment. They're saying they're committed, but they're not committing it with dollars. And so that's a challenge that we'll look to see. What are those elements? Is it understanding ROI a little bit better? Is it simplification of the programs? Is it better targeting, integration, whatever those factors are, to help draw out their funds that go beyond co-op into the channels. Content is next here. We looked at content, and man, this is just an industry challenge across the board. You can see for both telecom and everybody, content quality and relevance are a struggle. And I think this is just because it's so personalized. We hear time and time again for our telco customers and across the board that the content is not right. It's not what I want. It's brand approved, it's appropriate, but they really want it to be for them. They're the perceived experts in what works in their market. So it's really a challenge for the corporate partners to provide all the different content that they would want, whether it be, you know, social media content or direct mail or billboard content, that it fits in what they want. So the ability to customize, understand those rules, support those rules are really important. And the last one here that we wanted to look through is tools and support processes. So it's really interesting to see, you know, on both sides, processes and policies, strong support, better than the benchmark. On the tools side, they felt like there was some opportunity. You know, they can monitor some program and manage, but not necessarily as much as they'd like versus other platforms. This is a place for us too. You know, we are one of the tools that are being used here. So as we think about our own value and roadmap, you know, we're really working on ways to make it easier for our brand partners and channel partners, and also strengthen our own offering as well. So with that, Danielle, I think we want to just sort of wrap up here, and I'll talk through, you know, these 5 things that we found in mature organizations that they have in common. So number 1, we said it was identifying those dealers and partners with the greatest to potentially impact and change revenue and growth. So this just simply means not everybody's the same. You know, when you look at that maturity matrix, there was a percentage of folks, or over 20%, they were disengaged. So if you have the same program for those versus developing or even engaged in the program, you know, you're not going to get the same results. So how can you focus and identify on those partners that are the most valuable and going to really get in the boat with you and row in the same direction? 2 is opt-in programs. You know, Danielle mentioned before that we do a lot of this stuff for them. We're seeing a lot more and more of these opt-in programs grow that are just inclusive, roughly marketing in a box, right? I've got $1,000 a month, $500 a month. I spend it. What should I do with it? You guys go figure it out for me. So those opt-in programs have really continued to grow. Number 3 was provide simple co-op, MDF, or subsidy programs. You know, the way that you make these programs easiest to engage is the most important. If there's lots of rules, regulations, too many vendor choices, etc., then it becomes overwhelming for these folks. They don't have necessarily the time or interest to learn it to that level, and they disengage. So having approved agencies, vendors, content, all this stuff ready to go for media execution becomes really important. I mean, Danielle, how often can you potentially sell a media program through your platform, but then it's delayed 6 weeks because they don't have the content that they need or the ads to run, right? It's a relatively common occurrence.
It's not just a local thing. It's with, you know, marketers. Right. It's with national agencies that have, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. That's probably the first reason why things are delayed, content and creative.
Yep. So those are simple programs that really covers 3 and 4. And then the last one is ongoing dealer education programs and communication. I mean, we're trying to do these webinars here. We do lots with our customers at a one-to-one level, email programs are ways to help educate them. Danielle and Simpli.fi, I know those guys have a whole training and certification program through their Bullseye platform to try and tear down the barriers and make these things easier to learn or get people more educated. These are important things, I think, that help the industry collectively and the telco industry become more mature.
Agreed.
All right, so with that, we'll switch to Q&A here in a second. Just a quick note here. You know, we have the state of local marketing and telecommunications and technology available on the website. If you want to be able to get access to it, we'll email everybody here, but it's up on the website. You can also do your own specific maturity assessment in just a short amount of time. So feel free to log on to the website and do that. So with that said, Danielle, I'm going to turn it over to questions and see if we have any questions fire in from our audience. We got one right to start here. The question, Danielle, I think this would be good for you to answer to start is where do I start if I only have a small budget? How should I think about my entry points?
Yeah, so I think it all ties back to what are your goals, right? If you are selling a product in store, then you need to harness any tactic that can drive in-store visits, right? Which we spoke about, and Jason and his team, again, are experts in that, and they can help advise you. Just something that is benefiting your business goal. Again, audio might be cool, but like, why are you buying audio if you need to get people into the location and there's no attribution tied to that? So it's just kind of staying away from things that you've done forever just because you do it, and understanding what your goal is, and then we can help you build from there. It kind of depends on the client, but yeah.
Yep. Good. There's one more question here, at least. I'll take this first stab at this one. Is what's the biggest opportunity that you see today for telco partners? And I think this one is a lot of what Danielle you just answered. I mean, there's still, as people evolve, they're so quick to evolve to whatever the next new thing is that they haven't necessarily done the fundamentals of that thing. So the example that I would give you here is for one of our customers, they do location data management, essentially updating your Google My Business profiles. There are a multitude of fields. It's up over, I think, 50 different fields you could actually submit. So we took a look of our customers that submitted and had filled in greater than 30 of those fields had a 32% increase in search traffic to their site. So great, they know they need to do location data management and update their Google My Business page and across the board, right? With folks like Yext or reputation.com or et cetera, but they didn't actually just completely fill out the profile. So simply filling out the profile takes what you're doing, which is the right step, validating your Google My Business or location data stuff, but all the way completely filling that out, it drove search traffic. So it's the fundamentals of doing the right things that I think are also important. So Danielle, when you were talking earlier about doing digital direct mail, are you just doing it, or are you selecting some of the demographics and other targeting areas to kind of refine that? Are you taking advantage of what the tools that you're using have to offer to you, or are you not? And we find too often right now that people are so quick to just check boxes that they haven't necessarily thought through the purpose of what they're doing and how to do it the best that they can.
Right, they're like, I ran radio, so I'm gonna now do a programmatic audio because that's what I've always done. It's like, okay, I get that, but it's a lot more complicated than that, and there's just so much more opportunity to drive towards your goals.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay.
Any other questions, guys?
I think that looks like it for right now.
Okay.
Danielle, thank you so much for joining me. It's always great to work with you. I appreciate you joining us. Thank you, and all the folks at Simpli.fi.
You got it.
And
have a good one. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you all soon. Thank you so much for joining.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.